Imagine this. You're in a zombie apocalypse, being potentially the last chance in saving the human race. But instead you have other plans to use this scenario to your advantage. Plants vs. Zombies. I'm sure you've already heard of this. A zombie invasion led by this guy, and it's up to this guy to save the world with a few plants. I think you get the idea. Originally developed back in 2009 by PopCap Games, this light-hearted kids game went on to have multiple sequels and spin-offs, branching out into a strategy card game, a follow-up RPG, and even a trilogy of third-person shooters.
Garden Warfare.
The Garden Warfare games amassed a huge audience, millions of players experiencing the never-ending feud between the plants and zombies, in hopes of stopping Zomboss for his evil villain stuff. However, after years of these games being released, there has been an underlying story that completely flips the narrative of the once charming and playful Battlefield we know. And more importantly, who Crazy Dave really is. Garden Warfare, the first entry into PvZ's 3D trilogy, where we find ourselves in suburban flats, where we're surrounded by a town of houses. However, this is what we can just see at a surface level. Entering the map in Garden Ops mode, we see Crazy Dave fly off and leave until we vanquish enough zombies for him. However, if we instead trace the path in which he takes, we can see that he never left, hiding behind a set of trees and bushes, almost as if he was monitoring us. And you may be thinking, well, surely that's just the area where the model rests after the animation carries out. Well, the fact that this is very visible within the map's bounds tells me that PopCap did this intentionally, and also if we attempt to chase Dave's RV as soon as the game starts, we can see that it flies off into the distance soon after despawning, whilst the other identical van remains behind, just watching. And this isn't the only instance where Dave is present, as on the map Chomptown, Dave is once again seen round the back of these buildings, within the bounds of the map, after stating he has already left. These are the only two instances where Dave is spotted lurking out of bounds. With this I've come to the conclusion of, what if these zombie attacks were fake? Let me explain. Chomptown and Suburban Flats are the only realistic maps where people could hypothetically live in the PvZ universe, with Jewel Junction being a Zomboss secret mine facility, Crash Course being a golf course, Port Scallywag being used for zombie docking boats, and Sharkbite Shores located at Zom Beach. The only seemingly outlier is the Garden Center. However, we'll get back to that later. I will note, however, it's interesting how the Garden Center is practically giving away its plants for the public to take. I mean, half price on everything, 50% off planters, 3-for-1 seeds, sale today, 2-for-1 daisies. And if you think it's just some weird business decision made by the gardening center, then explain why plants are 90% off in a trailer park of all places, located at Cactus Canyon. Chomptown and Suburban Flats, having the most populated areas of housing, make them prime targets for Dave, hosting these large clashes between the plants and zombies for everyone to see from the insides of their own homes, rooting for the plants to win, making Dave become the hero everyone needs. But I'm getting ahead of myself. What really proves that Dave and Zomboss are even working together? Around all of the playable maps in the game, there are indications to prove that the plants and the zombies are secretly working together, as if it was all an act. At the gardening center, we see zombie shops and posters all around, tucked in between more plant-centric shops, as if it's a normal part of the PvZ society. One shop in particular is called Coffin Break Funeral Home and Cafe. This will be brought up later. Something that stands out to me in the garden center is the fact that in the center of the town, you can see a spire with a plaque at the bottom saying, "In honor of Dr. Zomboss, for his charitable donation of brains." What is this plaque doing here in this seemingly human-populated town? One of the most obvious points is that when choosing a garden to plant in Garden Ops mode, there's a chance Dave will say the voice line, "I'll phone the zombies." I'm not sure how clear I can prove the connection between these two rivals. Unless I could, as I have lied to you. On the map Jewel Junction, where Zomboss secretly harvests brains from clueless members of the local town, we can spot Dave yet again lurking outside the map, as if he's here to help Zomboss transport these brains. Furthermore, in Cactus Canyon, we see sludgy vending machines, implied to be serving brain slushies, alongside the more typical vending machine that serves food. Why would this zombie-targeted drink be sold at a hotel resort? unless there's something Dave is not telling us. And if that's not enough for you, progressing further into the course, we can see light poles with brains perched on top, as well as brain flags representative of the golf holes for the circuit. Now, if you're ready to argue against this point and claim, well, it isn't verified whether Dave owns the golf course, despite it having themes of the plants he owns, as well as being called Cactus Canyon, this doesn't prove anything, right? Well, in that case, let me show you something in Garden Warfare 2, now fitted with an open world lobby for you to explore, featuring a town hall, a football pitch, and Dave's house in a tree. More importantly, if you head around the back of the plant base, you can see a brain flag, the exact same flag from Cactus Canyon in Garden Warfare 1. Need more proof? Inside the garage around the front of the base is a secret underground bunker in which Crazy Dave uses to construct his giant battle mech. Stay with me here. This room outright confirms Crazy Dave's cannibalistic intentions. Looking to the left, we can see an illustration of a human brain stuck to the wall. Now, why would Dave have this picture in his underground base? This can't be representative of the zombies, nor Zomboss with his big ass head. The only logical reason for having this is potentially how to garner his own platter of brains. Not to mention, in the original game, he is shown to be using brains as a lure to train zombies into getting by his own defenses better. Okay, well, this doesn't mean Dave himself wants to consume brains. It's just a picture, right? On the opposite side of the room, we see a half-drunk zombie shake, known for having human brains. And take a look at the poster to the left of the brain, showcasing some identify as the Gravedigger zombie. If you haven't realized yet, this is the same person who was on the coffee shop logo, who has now seemingly been turned into a zombie, who can actually be spotted in the Z-Tech factory being tested on. Was he a threat to Crazy Dave? I mean, he took care of funerals. He was getting in the way of the bigger picture. He must be removed. He must be taken out. Just like the rest of the townsfolk in Neighborville, they must go. And you may be wondering why. Why would Dave do this to his own community? Well, in those eyes, there is no remorse. Just hundreds and hundreds of brains. A type of food so unearthly, so deranged, so crazy. Who's to say Zomboss hasn't instead just taken over the plants, and Dave is forced to comply by his rules, being forced to consume his friend's brains as a way of survival. We see in Zomboss's lair that there's a newspaper on the wall, indicating that the plants have already lost, and the zombies have won, which can be further backed up by this newspaper in his office showcasing that Dave won a contest against Zomboss when they were kids, making him want to seek revenge. This could make sense, as the zombie shops we see in the garden center may be by direct orders of Zomboss, forcing Dave to implement them for people to see. And in Garden Warfare 2, we see in the new Aqua Center, which has been overtaken by zombies, every shop is now of Zomboss descent. It even seems as though Dave is forced to hand over his supplies, as we can see Chomper's Pizza in the zombie karaoke room on the same map. Despite all of this evidence, I don't believe this theory to be true. I actually believe it's the opposite. At least, over time. Let me explain. Taking a closer look at the newspaper in Zomboss's room, we see that Zomboss has written over it in permanent marker, labeling Crazy Dave as a cheat, as if he stole this idea or the whole invention from Zomboss. This can be proven by the photo showcasing Zomboss's invention of the first Zombotany zombie, which is seen in the original game fighting Dave. I believe that Dave, the environmentally obsessed mad scientist, initially stole the formula to mutate plants from Zomboss, leading to him experimenting on them and creating a whole almanac of different plants. Suburbia being captured by Zomboss was all part of Dave's plan to scare the townsfolk, making him the public's hero, leading to everyone going to him for help, which is why we see the plants being available for very cheap in multiple areas to make sure everyone lets in the plants to their home. It's possible that these plants had defects and simply didn't do anything, as we can see on these posters that the iconic jalapeno, sunshroom, cherry bomb, etc. aren't alive, meaning no use for the neighbors and being overrun by the zombies. Or alternatively, the plants would just wipe them out, leaving a huge surplus of brains for Dave to tend to his cannibalistic needs. These were the people causing environmental pollution. They were the problem. How could more plant life grow without removing the bacteria from the planet? Dave could have easily wiped out the zombies, but what would this achieve? People would return back to society. There would be nothing left to fear. People wouldn't need Crazy Dave to defend themselves anymore. His whole master plan would be ruined. You might question why Dave would let the zombies get to the townsfolk, if it would just turn them into zombies themselves and become utterly useless? Well, what you may not know is that Dave doesn't just consider brains as a delicacy. As in the first game, we can see the restaurant Chomper's Chips and Chops illustrating a zombie hand ready to be served, implying Dave will eat any parts of the body. It makes you wonder what he used for his tacos we seem to be advertised repeatedly. In addition to this, on the storefronts right outside the plant base in Garden Warfare 2, we can see an illustration of a zombie with his scalp torn off, revealing a perfectly good brain, almost like a way to preserve it when Dave gets the urge to crave. Well, you may be wondering, what's the outcome to this? I mean, where does it go from here? Well, follow me as I wrap up this theory in the most recent installment into the PvZ shooter franchise. Battle for Neighborville sees us no longer in Zomburbia, and instead we've arrived at Giddy Park, almost as if Zomburbia has been cleared out of human life, with Dave being the sole survivor, one step closer to purifying the ecosystem. However, it seems as though Dave has already made progress, as there appears to be no one here at Giddy Park, despite being advertised as an amusement park for people to attend. Free for all, the flyers exclaim, despite not showing anyone in the background riding the active Ferris wheel. It's almost like Giddy Park acts as a central hub to lure people in straight to Dave, which can be proven by heading to the town center and peering through the windows, revealing a fake interior. Some sort of screen appears to be held up, covering the insides. Interestingly, these houses appear to be on sale for newcomers to buy, falling into Crazy Dave's trap and becoming his next victim. I mean, can you blame them? Crazy Dave is the people's hero. What joy can these people feel in this apocalyptic invasion? What choice do they have other than feeling safer and heading to Giddy Park to be protected by Crazy Dave in an attempt to return back to normal life? All whilst the plants have other plans for them. And failing to cooperate results in Crazy Dave kicking you from the game?